Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, I want to talk to the beginners out there. Those of you that have just started bass fishing and are looking for ways to catch more fish. That's exactly what I want to talk about today. So more specifically, what we're going to be talking about are 3 different techniques that you can use on a spinning setup. All right, so a spinning rod and reel, that's how a lot of anglers start out, and it's still a setup that I use today in tournament fishing. So you're never really going to outgrow the spinning rod, but there are some things that a spinning rod does really well, including light line. Light line and finesse presentations are kind of where a spinning rod excels. Now you see a lot of people, especially if you're fishing from the bank and you really can only have one rod, a lot of people will fish, reaction baits, things like spinner baits and chatter baits and all kinds of different techniques on a spinning rod. I'm not going to say that that's wrong, because in bass fishing, it's not rocket science. It's just supposed to be fun. So do whatever you want. You don't have to get it completely dialed like a professional angler does. But I'm going to say that there are some things that you need to focus on a little bit more to get the best the best experience out of a spinning rod setup. And so really the 3 techniques I'm going to talk to you about today are 3 techniques that revolve around rigging up soft plastic baits. Okay, soft plastic baits are some of the most versatile baits that you can use in bass fishing, and you can catch fish that are really active, but also fish that are very inactive and just not really in a feeding mood. So that's one of the beauties about a spinning setup, is that you can really finesse those fish and entice some bites. So let's go ahead and get started. The first rig that I want to show you, actually, let's back up. Let's rewind. I do want to go over my spinning rod and reel setup for those of you that are looking for like one rod, one reel to get started. There's a lot of different brands out there. There's a lot of different rods, a lot of different reels. And so you can get bogged down in the specifics of brand and all the features and stuff like that. But what I'm going to recommend is that you use a rod that is about in the 7-foot range. That could be 7 foot exactly. It could be 7.2, could be 7.3, depending on the brand and model. But that 7-foot range seems to be the sweet spot when it comes to bass fishing. Okay, using a spinning reel or spinning rod. And as far as the action, you want a spinning rod that, in my opinion, can do a bunch of different things. That's kind of the key when you're first starting out, is something that can be very versatile. And to me, something that is like a medium heavy is going to be the proper, and when I'm saying medium heavy, I'm talking about medium heavy power. Okay, you got action, so fast action, and a medium heavy power. But most rods that you pick up, like, let's just go over this one real quick. This one says 6'10". There we go. 6'10", medium heavy. Okay, it doesn't say medium heavy power on it or fast action. But most bass fishing rods are going to have at least a moderate fast action, if not a fast action, if they're fully graphite. And that's kind of what you want to focus on for most bass fishing applications, is a fast action. And a medium heavy power is perfect because, again, it can handle a lot of different situations. It can handle heavier tackle or heavier baits, but it can also handle those finesse baits pretty well too. So you can do a lot of things. So 7-foot rod in that range, medium heavy, and as far as the reel goes, usually manufacturers are categorizing their reels as far as sizes in like 2,500, 3,500, or 4,000 size. This one right here is the 4,000 size. I like anything in that range. I prefer a bigger reel, a bigger spool on my spinning reel than some other smaller panfish or something like that. So I like to use the 4,000 size reel for bass fishing, but anything in that 2,500 to 4,000 size spool is going to work great for you. And as far as like what I rig my reels up with, I'm a big believer in rigging your spinning reels up, especially for beginners, with braided main line. So get a braided line. I use Seagar Smackdown in the flash green. You got to put a backing on it first. And what I mean by that is the first thing that ties to your spool needs to be a short length of monofilament, enough to go around the spool several times. Something that will grab onto the spool. If you just tied the braid directly to the spool, it actually is not going to cinch up tight enough to be able to not slip as you're fighting a fish. So make sure that you put on just a little bit of monofilament, fluorocarbon, any of the nylon lines before you tie on your braid, and then fill up your spool with the braid, between 15 and 20 pound test braid, and then you can tie a fluorocarbon or monofilament leader to that. And the benefit of that, especially for new anglers, is it's going to reduce the amount of tangling that you experience, and it's also going to increase your sensitivity, okay, because it doesn't have any stretch, and it's very limp type of line, so it's not going to, again, it's not going to tangle as much. You're still going to have some wind knots, but it's not going to tangle as much. So just wanted to run through that. Keep it simple. As long as you kind of follow those basic guidelines for the right rod for bass fishing that I just laid out, you'll be fine. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. The first technique I want to show you is the most basic technique that was probably discovered by a newbie to the sport, and whoever it was that did this the first time, it was probably somebody's 5-year-old, but whoever did that, we need to send them a medal, because this is one of the most effective techniques and most simple techniques in bass fishing. So what we're going to do to rig this up is we're going to go ahead and take a hook like this. This is the WRM 201 from Hayabusa. And this hook right here is a special hook that is designed for wacky rigging. And wacky rigging is essentially this right here. We take a stick bait. This is a Z-Man Zinkers. So this type of stick bait, it's loaded with salt. It's pretty heavy for its size, and it has a very subtle action. We're going to take that hook and we're going to insert it through sort of the middle. There's like, on all these worms, most of these worms, you've got a little flat spot there, this little collar. I like to kind of go on the inside of the collar, so the edge of the collar on the inside there. Hook it through the middle, and this is one of the simplest techniques that you can throw in bass fishing. You're supposed to rig it weightless like this, and essentially all you're gonna do, it's super simple. You cast it out there to, a likely spot. Maybe there's a little stick up or something. It's not going to be weedless, so you don't want to cast it into cover, but as close to cover or some type of structure that you can possibly get it. Just cast it out there. Let the bait sink. Don't have a taut line. Just let it have a little bit of bow in the line so you can, feel a bite when it happens. But for the most part, you're just letting that bait fall down on its own weight. It's going to shimmy all the way down, and as soon as it hits the bottom, you can just let it sit there for a second, and then all you're going to do is lift up the rod tip and let it flutter back down again. Do that a few times, reel it in, and cast to the next target. Wacky rig is one of the best overall techniques in bass fishing. I would say if I was to kind of put peg down a specific season that this rig right here, the wacky rig, is really good at, it's got to be spring. Spring is probably the best time when the fish are up shallow, and they're either on the beds or roaming around looking for places to bed. A wacky rig is an absolute killer, but it works all around, all year round as well. So don't pigeonhole it into one particular season. And by the way, all the tackle I'm talking about today, I'm going to be putting in the description below. So we're going to be putting links, and I'm going to just be laying out exactly everything you need to get started. So, you know, if I miss something, just go to the description and find those links there. As far as the line, the leader that I'm gonna tie to my braid on my spinning rod, for all of this stuff, I'll just mention this right off the bat. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for you. Just tie 10-pound test fluorocarbon to it, okay? There's a really good line that Seagar came out with called Basics. It's $9.99 for a spool of fluorocarbon, 100% fluorocarbon. It's gonna be great for your application as a beginner, and you're not gonna break the bank. And you get all the benefits of fluorocarbon for $9.99. So that's awesome too. And that'll be in the description below as well. All right, the next technique is more of a rigging technique, and you can use it for a variety of different baits. It's really the one technique you gotta learn in bass fishing to make a presentation weedless, okay? So any soft plastic, you can rig it this way. So what we're talking about is the Texas rig. And if you're researching bass fishing for the first time, you're definitely going to see the Texas rig come up time after time, because it is absolutely essential to learn in bass fishing. So essentially the Texas rig can be rigged weighted or unweighted, okay? Usually for casting purposes, weighted is gonna be a lot easier to cast. So if you're fishing from the shoreline and you need to get longer casts, you know, you can use a little bit of weight. I would recommend going up to, but no heavier than 3/16 if you're fishing from the bank. And with spinning rods, you don't really want to use very heavy weights. You don't want to go up to like 1/2 ounce or more or something like that. 3/16 ounce or 1/8 ounce, this is going to be great. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take a simple worm hook. This right here is a Hayabusa offset shank worm hook, very standard issue for bass fishing. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our soft plastic worm, whatever you're throwing, this is the Z-Man Zinkers, this works really well, and we're going to insert it through the nose there, bring it out about 1/4 inch, turn it around, okay, so you got that little kink, that offset shank there in the chin, and then you're going to insert the hook point into the plastic. Now with Elastec, this is something that you're going to learn, but a little tip: if you're using Z-Man baits, they're made of Elastec. It's a different type of material than traditional plastics. I like to keep the point of the hook just dug into the Elastec. I've had some people complain that they don't have a great hooking percentage by doing that, but I have an excellent hooking percentage. So if give it a shot. I honestly think that this is the way to rig it, but some people say that they have a hard time getting the hook point through the Elastec. But anyways, the other way to do it is actually what we call texposing, where instead of just digging the hook point into the middle of the plastic, you bring it out through the top there, and then you just grab a piece of the plastic with the hook point, and that right there, weedless, but easily unhooks to be able to jam in the fish's mouth. So, all right, so that's a Texas rig. Again, you could have a sliding bullet sinker on the line too, but if you're fishing really shallow water and there's a lot of brush or vegetation or things like that, you can also fish it weedless as well. So whichever way you want, whatever you're trying to achieve, if it's like 2 foot or less, I think weightless is gonna work perfect for you. If it's like 2 foot or more, maybe you put on a weight and that's the way you fish it. But with this rig, you're essentially going to do the same thing. You're going to cast it out, let it fall to the bottom, and then you're just going to give it short little hops, or you can drag it just real slow. Dragging technique, as simple as it may seem, actually works extremely well. Just slowly just pulling it on the bottom, feeling every single rock. That is the key. All right, so Texas rig is going to be the second one. Fish it very slow, very deliberately. It's great for around cover. All right, the final rig that we have to talk about and you have to learn is a really good one. If you're fishing lakes that don't have a lot of vegetation, that have a lot of clean bottom, hard bottom, they aren't really mucky, this is the one that you want to throw. This right here is called a Shaky Head. All right, so Shaky Head is essentially just a jig, okay? You got a jig head and some sort of usually straight tail soft plastic worm, okay? And it's as simple as that. Really, it's very similar to the Texas rig, but this one is designed to stand a little bit more straight off the bottom, and so it is really good for just fishing very slow on the bottom. So this one right here, cast it out there. That dragging technique I was just talking about with the Texas rig, that's all you got to do with this. You know, they call it a shaky head, so you can add a little bit of shaking to it. But the beautiful thing about fishing a bait like this is if you cast it out there, let it hit the bottom and just slowly drag your rod. Actually, I kind of like to drag to the side with a shaky head. Just drag to the side, and as long as you're feeling the bottom and feeling every little nook and cranny as you pull that thing along, you're doing it right. And this technique can just be an absolute killer, but it's one of the best, especially for clean bottom type situations, both bank fishing or fishing from a boat. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to throw 3 different techniques at you, 3 different rigs that you can use to catch fish. These are some of the best in bass fishing. These will give you a really good foundation and allow you to kind of get a feel for especially those bottom bouncing baits and, you know, what that bite feels like and all that stuff. So another thing that I want to remind you guys of is the hook set. When you're setting the hook on fish with any of these techniques, the wacky rig is the easiest to set the hook on because all you have to do is reel into the fish. The other ones, okay, the shaky head and the Texas rig, what you're going to want to do is once you feel the bite, reel down till you feel a little bit of pressure of the fish and pull up at the same time. You don't have to like really give it to them real hard because you're using lighter line, but you do want to firmly lift up after you get all that slack out of the line. So anyways, guys, hopefully these techniques are going to help you catch some fish. I know that they will. If you use them, you're going to get bit. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Ask me any questions in the comment section below. I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.